Hello, my name is Clésia Mendes, and welcome to Womanhood from the Inside Out, where we'll be discovering and uncovering what is womanhood from the inside out. Why is it important? When does it show? How can we identify it? And the implications of womanhood from the inside out. And to help me in this delicious conversation, I've got my dear friend and guest, Mahima Shrestha. Mahima Shrestha is a crisis management consultant. She is currently focused on understanding and optimizing the human dimensions within organizations and communities. Welcome, Mahima.
Hi, thanks for having me. Um, I'm actually really happy you've got this show because I think there's such a space for just an exploration around womanhood and women and um, what that means really.
Mhm.
Because I think the reason I responded to your initial call was because I think womanhood or being a woman or what a woman should be like or what a successful woman is like. I think we have so many ideas of that, and we sort of carry them around with us as if they're real things, and real boundaries and real definitions. But really, I think, particularly more recently, I'm finding a lot more fluidity in that. And I find that, I don't really know what a woman should be like. Um, and actually, more broadly, I don't know what any person should be like. And I think we've just carried around all of this baggage for far too long. And um, I, for one, am ready to just see it differently and explore it differently. So I'm really looking forward to this.
And that is so beautiful, Mahima. First of all, thank you so much for answering my calling, if you will, because I had I had the inkling of this idea a few weeks ago actually, and then I was doing a show with Dr. Ann Curtis, and we put the video out there, and we had a lot of comments on it. And one of the comments from one of the guys, one of the followers, that he said in terms of um moral superiority of the women, he said something that resonated with me. I was like, okay, now we are ready to bring this forward, what really means to be a woman in the current time, um, with all the images and messages that we receive from the media. How to be successful means like what you have to do if you are a mother, if you are a career woman, what makes you I felt the word special, but that wasn't even the energy of the word, and I became so curious about it. And when I put the calling out there, and your answer, I had plenty of interest, but you were the one. You sent me a personal message straight away. I was like, I want to find out what you're on, and here we are, and I'm so excited because it's I guess is one of the gifts of living the in our current times. And I'm talking from perspective of Western world, right? Because we know in several parts of the world it's very challenging to be a woman, but in the Western world there are so many opportunities, so many possibilities, so many chances of discovery and recreating ourselves, that I felt that it was really worthwhile to explore that. And so here we are. I put a call for career women. What is your understanding of what a career woman is, Mahima?
Well, for me, it's one of those labels we have, you know.
Ah,
It's one of those labels that is supposed to imply a very broad spectrum of ideas. Um, and to me, it's really no different from just being a person. Because career woman is a label on my circumstance, right?
mhm.
And we have all sorts of labels on our circumstance. We have poor or rich. We have guy or girl. We have child or adult. We have all sorts of labels. We have doctors and psychiatrists versus school teachers. These are all just labels to describe a certain set of external circumstances.
Mm.
I think what to me is part of the promise of the principles is that we somewhere along the way land up finding freedom from a lot of those labels.
Oh.
And career woman for me is one of them. I don't know what that means. And I don't even know if I particularly identify with that or don't. There's just life.
Mm. And it's very interesting because yourself, you do many things, and one of the things you do, you are a crisis management consultant. Right. And I guess if you were to say if they were to ask you what you do, and I said, one of the things I do is I am a crisis management consultant, automatically the person would get a couple of ideas or labels or structures about what does it mean, or are you too young to do that? Are you too old? Do you know what you do? What sort of experience have you got? Could you, for example, share with us when you say what you do, what sort of reactions do you get?
Well, actually, I'm probably the more problematic one, because usually when people ask me what I do, I always ask them like in what context are you asking? Because to me, what I do is it depends what day of the week, what time you catch me, and I might be doing very different things.
Exactly.
So even that, I mean, I think it defines a large number of hours. Out of like 100 hours I spend at work,
Mm-hmm.
a large number of those I work in aviation in crisis management.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel like that's I mean, I think it's natural that when somebody says, hey, this is what my profession is, or this is what I do, we understand that to mean certain things about that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I'm learning is that it doesn't imply anything about the person. Because like if you meet 14 doctors or 14 crisis management consultants, they're very different.
Yes.
Personality-wise and life-wise, and equally, they're all the same. Like I speak at schools. I do a program with adolescent girls. I work with airlines, and I think if we spend a little time just really being present with the people who are in front of us at the time, we find that all people are really the same.
Yes. Yes. And I was basking on what you just said, because it sounded so profound to me. And that is, for me, I love meeting people from all walks of life. I love traveling, all nationalities and so on. And I guess because I love many people, I tend to attract people from international backgrounds or different religions. I'm not too attached that they need to have a similar background as myself, because I like the variety that we are all different. So that's funny. It's a funny way of looking at right now. And some feedback that I had is that I feel comfortable speaking with the doctor in the same way that I would feel very comfortable speaking with someone that is used to do manual labor, that people would feel different. I would feel very comfortable in terms of locale of in a 7-star hotel, in the same way that I would feel very comfortable in a hostel, youth hostel, something like that. But mostly because I kind of have like very, I would say, maybe probably comfortable thoughts. My thinking is quite comfortable, and I'm very comfortable in my own skin, in who I am. And some feedback I had, people telling me, oh, when you're speaking with someone, you treat them as an equal. And I was thinking, at first I was taken aback for that comment, because it made no sense to me. It was like, yeah, we are all human beings, so of course we are equals. Yeah. But it's not the way that everyone sees. So that's my thing. But I can see that if someone asks you what you do, might be they are trying to get the word that came to me right now was snapshot.
Yes.
Right? They're trying to get a snapshot of who you are, but you are multidimensional. A snapshot is like 2-dimensional only, right? But who you really are is multidimensional, right? You are way more than your experiences, way more than what you do, way more than your connections, way more than your assets. You are always way more. But yeah, so I guess get the feeling that sometimes when someone asks you what you do, they're not asking who you are. They just want,
and it's useful, right? It's useful to know these basics, like what do you do? These are really useful things.
Mm-hmm.
And then they facilitate and sort of lubricate social life. And it is nice to be able to just get a quick sense for people and ask, hey, what do you do? Are you in media? It's useful to have just some broad category.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we ourselves too sometimes forget that we're not made up of those categories.
Oh.
Those are useful, and it's useful to say them, like when people say, hey, like, introduce yourself. I mean, it doesn't have to be profound or anything. But sometimes we ourselves forget that I'm actually not my job, and that I'm not whatever else I might have called myself over the years. We forget that ourselves as well, I think.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And what just occurred is that in the context of the conversation we're having right now, almost like saying I am a woman, but there is only a category of who I am.
Yes.
It's like, yes, okay, that is as a human being, that is my sex. I am a woman. But yes. That does not tell me anything about what is my potential or where are my capacities and what sort of resourcefulness I've got access. Says nothing about
right, just like any other human. I mean, I think, I don't know, to me it's not a necessary label for navigating life, because to each individual, navigating your life is an internal thing, right? And it might be that, like, I don't know, to me it just seems more fluid than when we say career woman, or when we say housewife, or when we say, I mean, all people, as we know, are experiencing life from the inside. We're all just experiencing this sort of mental, internal life. And in that context, what meaning does it have, right?
Mahima, I got really curious about what you just said. So when you're saying that we are experiencing internal life, what exactly do you mean? Can you give us an example?
Yeah, so for a long time, I had thought that life was out there. And it sure looks like that. That we have circumstances, we have friends, we have family, we have boyfriends, and that's life. And that life is essentially made up of all those outside things. But what we're learning is that life is essentially an internal experience, so that I have no way of experiencing you directly. I can only experience you through my thinking about you. So that I can only, it's not that you don't exist out there.
Right.
You do exist out there, but I have no idea what that is out there. I can only experience you through my own thinking. And so essentially we go through our whole lives experiencing our own thinking and our own, that's what I mean when I say life is essentially an internal experience. That it's not out there, which is not to say there aren't things out there. There are things out there, just that I don't know what they are. I can only experience them through my own thinking.
Right. And that is so interesting. So different people have different experiences of reality, or even the experience of reality itself is always personal, is always bespoke.
Yes.
Is that that is what I'm hearing? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Well, yes, because I mean, just at the simplest level, right? If there are 4 bystanders and some guy comes and shoves another guy and that guy falls down, 4 people have 4 very different ideas of that. Somebody might think that was completely uncalled for. Somebody might think, well, yeah, but maybe this guy did something to upset him before, so maybe they feel understanding. Maybe you think there's just never a reason for physical aggression towards somebody. For somebody else, physical aggression is a very common and reasonable response to upset. So we think that there are real sort of truths out there, and that there are facts, and there might be, but you can't know them. You can only know them through your own thinking. It's like stuff happens out here, and I'm out here, and there is this sort of invisible filter through which I see everything that happened. And which is how sometimes people can believe stuff and you just can't get over it. You think, what? Really? How in what version of life does this guy live? But to them, it seems real. And just like that, there are things that you and I believe, which people think is absolutely ridiculous, that there is no version of life in which that makes sense. And so to me, that's what I mean when I say life is essentially an internal experience.
That is so interesting. And what it means to me also, in terms of one of the implications, is if life is an internal experience, and I'm not challenging it, right? I'm accepting life is an internal experience. The way your experience of life is personal. So if you feel called to do something or to become something, and you take in consideration other people's ideas of what you can or what you cannot do, probably taking in consideration other people's ideas may not be the smart thing for you to do, because they are living their own lives and you live in your own life. And potentially that calling that you are, something inside of you, that or project or an idea that is asking for your energy and for your attention, and you're listening to other people's I don't know, maybe opinions of it, and probably with this, the wise thing to do is like, okay, they see what they see, naturally this is coming through me because it's something that I need to bring to fruition, and probably would be the right thing to put it forward. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm putting across right now.
Yeah, it does. This is going to sound like I'm disagreeing with you, but I'm really not.
Okay.
Because see, here's what I'm realizing recently, that what I want is kind of really arbitrary. I get this feeling that I don't really know what I want, because depending on what mood I'm in or what else is going on. So when you say, other people might have ideas of what's possible for you and what's not. Well, I have ideas about what's possible for me and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
But if you catch me when I'm caught up in some insecure thinking, I think, no, that's not really possible for me. And if you catch me on a good day, I'm like, well, yeah, why would I do it? So it's not just outside, see, it's inside as well. Like, you always, at the end of the day, you've got to take a call on what are you going to run with. Because in a sense, it's really arbitrary. It just depends on where in the flux you're in.
Wow. You definitely added a new dimension there, because when you say, okay, what I want is actually arbitrary, it has to do with each context where my thinking is at the moment. Because if I'm having insecure thinking, what I want may seem really hard. But if I'm having secure thinking, I was like, yeah, it's easy. All you have to do is to contact these 3 other people, send this other email, go on Google, and yeah, we're done. We're settled.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And also when he said, okay, I'm about to say something that it seems that I'm disagreeing with you, but really not. And the fact that you said that kept me open, right? So I wasn't coming from I wasn't having any sort of defensive thinking about it. It was like, oh, cool, I'm curious. Tell me more. And he added a new dimension. Yeah. So what is possible when you are open? About openness, Mahima. So we didn't mention this in the beginning of the show, but you are in Nepal at the moment. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I live in Nepal. Yeah.
You live in Nepal, yes. So, and I think it was like 1 or 2 years ago. You had a series of earthquakes.
Oh yeah, it was actually this last summer.
Last summer, and you had an incredible, for our eyes, incredible experience. Would you like to share what happened to you? What have you seen in terms of the understanding, something that clicked for you?
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to share a small piece that seems relevant here.
Sure.
When we're saying that life is essentially an internally generated experience, not as in like I can make stuff happen out there, but that my experience of what's happening out there is always self-generated. So for me, the earthquake was kind of an extreme example of that. The first sort of as soon as it happened, it's just so visceral and unexpected, right? So there's all of this adrenaline, and you're like completely terrified. And at some point, sort of randomly recognizing that the internal experience of something and what's happening out there are kind of not connected.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't really articulate what I guess what I realized at the time. But what I understood from that was very practical for me, was that the reason I was afraid was because I felt unsafe, right? And what I recognized, in which I couldn't have planned for or tried to do it for myself, but it sort of just spontaneously happened, that I realized that if it is true that my internal experience and my circumstances or whatever is happening out there, in this case the earthquake, are unrelated, and that whatever my experience is right now has to come from what I'm thinking about the earthquake out there. And I just understood that to mean that at that moment, to feel safe or unsafe, either option was equally available to me. And in recognizing that, A, I was no longer afraid. And B, it became less solid to me, so that, because we had aftershocks for weeks and weeks after that, so that for the couple of seconds it shook, you would still get afraid and you would still get worried. But I recognized how we carry that through time, so that the earthquake happens for 45 seconds and stops, but for the next 4 hours, it's still in my head. And therefore, I'm still having this really intense reaction to it, even though the earthquake is no longer there. It happened and it stopped in 45 seconds. So similarly, the aftershocks, even though many of them were intense, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, but I saw really clearly how we carry that fear through time and keep reliving that, so that I could be afraid for weeks, not because the ground is shaking for weeks, right? But because it shook, and I have a memory of that. And I have somehow carried it forward through time, and thus have continued to have a really intense experience of it. So I think what I learned from that is that things happen, and they sort of have a beginning and an end, right? But in my head, I could just make it go on and on. And I had always thought that it was the thing that happened that made me upset or uncomfortable or afraid for all those weeks. But that actual thing, somebody might have said something nasty, I might have had a talk and it was a complete flop show, I might have, I don't know, fallen on my way, whatever. That actual incident has a beginning and an end, except in my head. In my head, I can make it go on forever after. And I can continue to say, well, that thing made me upset. But that thing has been over a long time.
And Mahima, that is so powerful what you said, because you link to what people told to you. And for me, in terms of this understanding that we are talking about, that I'm calling the womanhood from the inside out within this context, and the way it became very, very clear to me is because I went to one of Jamie Smart's live events. And for people who don't know, Jamie Smart, he's a author, consultant, trainer. He does several things as well. It's just one of his many labels. And I went to one of his events, and one of the things that I shared is that I used to have a difficult relationship with my mom, with my mother. So it was one of the reasons why I told myself it was one of the reasons why I moved to Portugal, to UK. So I was having a conversation, and we are with this, and it was less than 10 minutes, if I remember correctly. And it told me several things, including, well, it's just the way you see things, because reality is that we are always in the present, and we are always connected. We are always connected to life, to ourselves, to nature, to other people. And our thinking could make us believe that what we're feeling right now is connected to what other people did or told us in the past, what they can do or tell us in the future. But reality is that you only have this moment right here, right now. And how can you know for sure what they're going to tell you? Can you foresee the future? And what it told me in that moment didn't make sense intellectually. It's one of those I was like, I haven't got a clue what he's on about. And off I went. But one of the things that he extended, he invited me to give a call to my mom. So while intellectually I didn't get much, I think that I kind of got something here. So when I called my mom, I remember that I was present. I wasn't foreseeing what my mom would tell me. I wasn't bringing the memories of the things that happened in the past or the things that she did to me or what sort of reactions I had. I just remember, and right now I'm remembering the situation, that I was very present and very quiet, and I didn't feel much mind chatter while I was talking with my mom. And we had such a connected conversation, and it was loving, and it had a beautiful feeling attached to it. And I was, whoa. And then I thought probably that Jamie Smart guy, he hypnotized me because he used to be the NLP. So I decided to call 1 week later to see if whatever it had done to me had worn off, right? So I called my mom, and this time around, we had an even better conversation, even more connected, more loving. And the sort of things that my mom was saying was like, whoa. And then I tried again 1 month later. And it wasn't a similar experience, it was totally different. And this is what I saw. And I remember that all of a sudden, I started feeling this deep love for my mom, right? And then I remember that I was like, oh, I had forgotten how much I loved my mom because we used to have so much strife in our relationship that I really forgot how much I loved my mom. And that feeling started flowing again. And that's how when I actually saw that, okay, there is something onto these 3 principles. So we spoke about these 3 principles before. Would you be willing to share what you know, how you see it, how you perceive it?
I hate to disappoint you, but probably not. So for me, I just have a really, I don't know, sort of piecemeal understanding of it. I mean, just as it evolves for me, I feel like I see just pieces of it or glimpses of it. So I'll give you an example of what I saw recently, right? So I was presenting at this conference. And at one point, so normally, I mean, I do a lot of these, and it's just like I enjoy them. I usually keep the presentations really short and do lots of Q&A. And but at some point, I started to have a lot of thinking about it. And then I was like, oh, what if it's terrible? And like, oh God, I don't want to do it. And I had all of this thinking about it. And then suddenly one morning I woke up and I realized that I've been banging on about this like thought and feeling thing, right? And and that it's essentially an internal experience, and that whatever happens out there is no way in which that stuff can physically, energetically, electronically, in whatever other way actually get in my system and make me feel something. That it's going to have to come through my thinking. And so then I thought, well, what that means for me is that if it's a total flop show, all I've got to live with is my own thinking about that. And I thought, well, yeah, I could live with that. I might be chattering on for a while and be like, so stupid, and how could you? But it's still, who cares? Like, it's just in my head, right? But before I used to think that, like, embarrassment, for example, that like other people's opinions, like they meant something, like they sort of had these tentacles that could like get hooks on you, you know, and that it it just stayed with you or you carried it over. But actually, if it's just going to have to come to me through my thinking, so that essentially all those hooks are made up of my own thoughts,
Right.
so I can live with that. So
Oh,
if it's a total flop show, who cares? Like, there's going to be some chattering in my head for a while, and then it'll just get bored and stop. There's just no, yeah, validity to that. So yeah, it was great, and I had a super time. Yeah.
that is that is so beautiful. I was thinking, do you guys have a show called the X Factor in Nepal?
No, we don't.
No, have
No.
you heard of it?
But yeah, I've seen it.
You've
Yeah.
seen a couple of episodes. So back in 2012, I was speaking with a friend. So to cut the story short, I went to the X Factor,
Right.
and it was one of those experiences you were talking about. It bombed.
Oh dear. We've all been there.
And then it bombed, and it was the one of the judges, Jerry Halliwell. She was like, "I love your energy," but no, it was one of those. I didn't get not even a yes. Right, the audience had a great time. I had a great time, but I didn't get any yes to go ahead with it. And I was like, "Oh well," and off I went. For me, it was only an experience, and I didn't tell anyone when I went. Actually, I went by myself.
Okay.
My friend that we were speaking when the idea popped, and then some people were like, "Oh, what were you feel? How embarrassing!" Because it was shown like to 10 million people. I don't know what sort of ratings the audiences were at the time. 10 million people plus the internet. The internet, I've got like 4 thumbs up, so I was very excited about the 4 thumbs up.
Right. Okay.
But
I love it.
I put a message. Thank you very much for the 4 thumbs up. It doesn't get any better than that.
Oh, I love it.
But some people ask me, it was like, I didn't used to mention it all because for me, I didn't have thinking about it at all. It's like, for me, it was like, oh, it was a fun experience. At least when I have kids or grandchildren, I can say, yeah, I did that. I've been to the X Factor and I did this other thing as well. But I didn't have much thinking about it. And one of my friends, and so I didn't read any comments on the page. I knew how I had done, but I didn't have any thinking about it. It was like, oh, cool. It was an experience, nothing lost. And I guess because I didn't have much thinking about it, a couple of things came out of it as well. Someone invited me to go on a radio show to interview me about my experience. And we had such a great show that he invited me to start doing my own show once a month. And then he gave me the show. Basically, the radio station said, would you like to run with it? Which I did. I did the radio show for 10 months. And the thing is, that sort of situation, that is one of, I guess most people are very afraid of social embarrassment. And that would be more than enough to lock yourself in the house and not go out for, I don't know, maybe the next 20 years or so. And for me, it was fine. It was just an experience. And because I didn't have thinking about it in either way, just it was a cool experience that allowed me to move on with my life and do other things and still use it as a platform for the next thing. But yeah, so if nothing happens, Woody Allen used to say, 80% of success is showing up. And I really like that quote a lot. So nothing bad happens when you flop.
When you mentioned that story, I think to me it highlights a couple of things, right?
Mm.
So the first one being that there is a way in which it looks like when something like that happens, that is forever a part of you, and that it's sort of like makes its dot on your life story, right? And we at some point think that has meaning, that it's a real dot, and it in some cases might be a stain. And for me, I had never recognized that those things only exist in either my head or somebody else's. So if somebody else is thinking about that and either they're laughing or they're saying, oh, I wish I could have tried that, or it still exists just in some really intangible, can't touch it, doesn't really exist. You can believe it if you like fairy dust, but it's not really there. And so that's one aspect of it, that we have all of this fear related to it and all of this sort of either embarrassment or trauma or whatever related to that, that we carry around assuming that that thing is real. It was real for that 15 minutes that you were actually on stage and something was happening. But the minute you stepped out of that, that thing is only in somebody's head.
Wow.
It doesn't really exist. And so for me, I have found a lot of freedom in that. And a lot of just lightheartedness, because like the worst thing that happens is that I get some crappy thinking and I have to live with that.
Yeah.
Right? And the other thing, now wait, I can't remember. Something else that occurred to me when you were talking about it led you to the radio show, and then I can't remember it. Anyway, you go on, and if it comes back, I'll say it then.
I was something that had just occurred to me, and in the beginning of the show, I spoke about the implications of the womanhood from the inside out, and naturally, when we're talking about womanhood from the inside out, really is life from the inside out. It's for all human beings. It's not just for women or just for children or just for men. It's just the way. The fact that we are human beings having a human experience, naturally, that's the way we create our life. Our experience of life is thinking generated, thought generated. And I know it when we're having a thought and we have a feeling related to that thought, it appears real, because that is the sole purpose of thinking, is to make you believe it's real. That's a given. That's a given. And now and then, once you actually start seeing it, and it is totally natural that we forget about it, that we are it's not a technique. It's not a technique that you think it was like, oh, hang on, it's just my thinking that is tricking me or something like that. No, it's just one of the principles of being a human being. We are these human beings having a human experience, and that's how we experience life, through our thinking. Is thought generated. But once we start seeing it more clearly, then we start believing our thinking less. And what I mean with that is that, for example, if we are having insecure thinking, and we all may have experienced that, if you're having insecure thinking, naturally you are feeling very insecure about the project. Let's imagine that I don't know, you are a lady, and you have been at home taking care of your 4 children, and now you'd like to go back to the workforce, and you have to go for a job interview. If you're feeling really nervous and insecure, it's just because you're having insecure thinking in the moment, and that's absolutely fine. And just recognize and let it go, and realize that once you drop into this present moment, and once you get in touch of who you really are right here, right now, you feel something else, because that is the nature of thought. It's transient. It's always passing. Thought is not personal. It's just passing. And you may feel insecure thinking one moment, you feel like really brave in another moment, you may feel elated because you got the job in a different moment. So, but it's always transient, and that is you're not your thinking. You're way more than your thinking, and your thinking is always going by, almost like clouds in a blue sky. And if you could imagine that you are the blue sky, and the clouds is just your thinking. Yeah, that is the way I'm seeing it at the
That brings
moment.
me to something that I think we forget. So when you say that, that somewhere along the line we start to take our thinking less seriously,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's easy to forget that we do it already. So, I mean, in the middle of this conversation, I would have noticed I have a book on the bed, I have a lamp on the side, I can see, I can hear footsteps, and I'm like, who is that? Now, all of these things have occurred to me,
Uh-huh.
and I've sort of like gone past. But some of those things we begin to think are really important. So, for example, if somewhere along that line I had this thought, I don't know, about going on stage and saying something, or about like insecurity about a project,
Mm-hmm.
that's no different from me noticing the color of the wall, from me wondering whether I should go have my nails done, it's no different. Like, it's not like one thought is bigger than another, that there are some small thoughts and some big thoughts.
Oh,
Thoughts are thoughts. But there are some that I take really seriously, so that if an insecure one comes along, I'm like, oh, that really means something. I've just forgotten that hundreds of thoughts have gone by just from the time we started talking.
Wow.
And so if one comes along that's familiar and has this sort of grip on it, I begin to take that really seriously. And there's a way in which sometimes we can make a big deal out of that. We're like, well, I know it's just my thinking, but I have all this insecurity and I don't know what. Well, I mean, you have lots of thoughts, and insecure ones are one of those. And it's really no different. It really has no, like, would you be afraid if you saw a red speaker? It's like, no, you thought of a red speaker. It's just, it doesn't mean anything. But if you thought of, like, I don't know, does this color suit me? And maybe it doesn't, and I really shouldn't have worn this one to the party.
No, you're looking great. I'm seeing
You,
that.
like, somehow that thought scares you. And you think that really has meaning. It's different from having a thought about a red speaker. It's no different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Mahima, I'm loving our conversation, and I'm under the impression that we kind of we are reaching the kind of the end of our show for today. And where can people find you if they want to get in touch, they want to invite you to speak to a conference, how they can find you? What is the easiest way?
Well, Facebook is probably the simplest.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, I usually check that fairly often. So if you drop me a message there, that's probably the simplest way. Also, I think highly recommend just not taking our word for some of the things we're saying, and just for your listeners to just check in for themselves and see whether any of the things we've said they have examples of in their own life.
Yeah, and what I would like to ask, so if people find you on Facebook, how do they spell your name on Facebook? How are you showing up on Facebook?
Mahima
Yeah.
Shrestha. And if you can't remember that, I'm sure you'll put a link at the bottom of
I
that.
will put a link at the bottom. So for you, it will be Mahima Shrestha.
Yes.
Yes, I got it. I got it.
Well done.
Thank you. For the
Thank you
people.
very much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, you're not going yet. I'm just telling people how to find me, and then we'll wrap it up. Just bear with me, darling. So, with the people that would like to find me, you can either go on Facebook. So that would be facebook.com/Clésia.Mendes, or you can find me on Twitter. But usually, I'm mostly on Facebook. Or you can go to my website, www.clesiamendes.com. So,
Oh, that's a very good idea.
the thing I use it when I do my periscopes. I use this, so I know I did the work once and I get to reuse it.
Yes.
Mahima, thank you very much for showing up on the show. I'm so excited that you were my first guest on Womanhood from the Inside Out. Do you have any final thoughts, something final that you would like to leave for our listeners today?
I think it would be nice to sort of circle back to where we started with womanhood from the inside out, and I guess, what does that really mean? And in closing, I guess my message would be to find out for yourself.
Yeah.
That if you stop looking at all your old stories and memories and historical artifacts for a definition of who you are right now, then who are you, and what is possible for you, and what could you be?
Yeah. Oh, that is beautiful, Mahima. Thank you very much. For me, my final words would be, you are way more than your label. So what could you do or be if you choose something different? And that's all. Mahima, thank you so much. It was delightful to have on this first episode, and
Thank
I'll
you
see
so
you
much.
soon.
I
Thank you,
really enjoyed
darling.
it.
Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye. See you.
See you.